Hello, this is How To Bob, and in this video I'm going to show you how to install high intensity discharge lights on a Honda Shadow Sabre. I've got this nice high intensity discharge light kit on the internet. It comes with all the components you need. The light bulb, it's 4300 Kelvin color wise, comes with the ballast, wiring harnesses, and the igniter or the amp, and a nice long wiring harness. So here's what the lights look like before. A little yellow, not quite as bright as I'd like them to be. You can never have the lights too bright for night riding, so I'm going to go ahead and change them out. So to get started, I'm going to take out the two screws here on the headlight assembly using an 8mm wrench. There's one on each side, and I just loosen those up and remove the screw. There's a little spacer in there, so make sure you hold on to that. And then the headlight will lift up slightly. It's kind of hooked on the top, and then it'll pull right out. You can see the little tab here, and that goes on the hook up here. Once that's out, I can go ahead and disconnect the headlight and set it off to the side safely. Now that I've got the headlight out, I need to remove the gas tank because I have to run a wire from the headlight all the way to my battery. And to do that, I just take this bolt in the back out, then I go up to the front of the tank, and I'm going to remove this bolt. Once I get these bolts out, I have to disconnect my fuel line, so I'm going to turn off my fuel first and then remove the hose clamp. And I found it easy to take a screwdriver and just put it on top of the hose and gently push down while tugging on the hose. And I'll get a little bit of gas here, but not too much. Now on the opposite side of the tank, there is a hose that's connected. It goes through the frame, so I have to remove that also. And I have some LED lights that I had to disconnect. You may not have those. And then my tank is free to remove, and I'll set that off to the side somewhere safely. So now I have to access an area to run some wire. So on the left hand side of the bike, there's a cover right up where the handlebars meet the frame. I'm going to go ahead and remove the two plastic screws off that, and that's where I'm going to start running my igniter. That's my igniter. So I want to run these two all the way back to the battery. So my igniter is going to sit right here, and I'll zip tie it in place, and then these wires will get pushed up into the headlight assembly, so I can go ahead and get those started and push. That connects to my old harness. Then I'll pull my other pieces up through, ballast connector, and all the wires are up in there. Now I have to run all my wires back. I have two wires that I have to run back to the battery. There's a constant power supply once the bike's on to the ballast and headlight assembly. It gives it a nice smooth light. So I just kind of work my wires back to the battery area and get them nice and neat. And once I get them all the way back to the battery area, I took the fuse out to make it easier to pull, but once I get them back to the battery area and get them situated comfortably, I'll go through and zip tie all the wires into place, keeping them nice and neat and tidy so they don't get pinched or rubbed or anything like that. So I can put my zip ties on now that I have my wires run back. And then my next step would be to get the wires down to the battery, and once I get them down to the battery, I can go ahead and hook them up. I'm going to hook up the positive here. You can see I have a lot of accessories on this bike: lights, speakers, and heaters and whatnot. And then I hook up my negative here. So now I've got this all hooked up and tied up. I can go ahead and put my cover back on, and these screws are easy enough just to push back on. You put the little flare nut on in the hole, and then you just push that in. So I'm safe to put my tank back on. Just like to get that back on. I just hook up my hose on the right hand side of the bike, push that up in there, and then make sure my hose clamp gets up on the actual hose there where it needs to be. And I go to the other side and push my fuel line up on the bike and put the hose clamp up all the way, make sure everything's secure. So now I need to bolt my tank on, and I'm going to start with the front bolt, get that tight. Once I get that tight, I can move along to the back side. Now there's a spacer that I want to make sure I put in first, and then I can put my bolt on and tighten it down. Okay, I've got everything put back together. Now it's time to hook up the lights. I have my connector here that connects to the existing wiring harness. The yellow one connects to the ballast, and then you can see I have a wiring harness here. The wires really only fit in one place. You can't mess it up. They only connect where they're supposed to connect, fortunately. So that'll leave me connectors for the light. Now I have to do some modifications on the actual light itself. So I take the rubber piece off. I push down on my headlight clip here, and you can see it's spring loaded. And once that's off and out of the way, I can just lift up my light and remove my light, and I'll save that for later if I need it. Now here's my new HID light, and you can see there's a tab. It only fits in one way. There's a larger tab. Once I get that tab in, I can go ahead and put my spring clip around the bulb and make sure it's tight. Now this rubber boot's going to need to be modified. You can see the little edge here. I have to take my utility knife here and just cut around the edge, get a nice clean edge, and rip that off of there, and then it'll fit right over top of the new HID light. Feed my wires through and push my rubber boot on the new bulb and get it nice and tight. And you can see the top is marked here, and I want to make sure that's up because there's holes, drain holes at the bottom, just in case there would be some water in there. Now the ballast, I found it easier to bend the mounting tabs because this is just going to be sitting in my headlight assembly. It gives me more room so I can tuck it in here because it's a really tight fit. And once I get it tucked in there, I have to wrap my wires around and leave the ends here that still need to be plugged up into my light bulb. Got my high and my low and an activator plug here. So now that I've got everything connected, I can tuck my wires in as neat as possible. It's a really, really tight fit, and I can take my light assembly and hook it on the top here and here. And once that gets hooked on there, I just take my spacer and I want to put it in, and then take my screw, and you have to push back on the light a little bit, give it a little pressure so that the holes line up. And once you get them lined up, I can go ahead and tighten my headlight screw, and then I have the other side. I'll put my spacer in, and again I'm going to push back on the light once I get my screw in here, and that lines up the screw holes so that I can tighten them up. So now that I have everything hooked up and everything is wired, I'm going to take it outside and try it out, and you can see that it's very, very bright. It has a high and a low, and it's much, much safer for riding at night. So this is how you wire up an HID light on a Honda Shadow Sabre. I'm How To Bob. Thanks for watching.